My name is Eduardo Franco. I'm 57 years old, and up until last Thursday, I was in charge of operational safety supervision at Northwell Freight Logistics, a transport company based in Denver, Colorado. I worked there for over 2 decades, back when they still used paper logs and printed spreadsheets to track deliveries and shipments. I started out as a field technician, slowly got promoted, never asked for a raise, never slacked off, never got caught up in office politics. I just did my job, and did it well. Over the years, I faced it all: tax audits, system failures, internal sabotage, even a $1 million theft that I helped investigate. I stayed because I believed in the mission, in the people, even after 4 CEOs came and went like restless tides. That morning, I was called into the 3rd floor conference room. When I saw Patricia from compliance already seated next to the new regional manager, Lucas O'Donnell, I knew right away. Lucas was a guy in his early 30s, had an MBA in something vague, and used big words to mask small ideas. He'd been transferred from the Chicago headquarters a few months earlier, full of talk about structural renewal and process optimization, phrases I'd learned to interpret as cutting costs at the expense of the people who actually work. His expression was neutral, almost robotic, as he said, "Eduardo, the company is reallocating strategic functions, and unfortunately your position has been phased out." Cold, blunt, no room for a response. Patricia could barely look at me. I just nodded, took the pen out of my pocket and placed it on the table along with my badge. "Do I have until the end of the day to clear out my desk?" I asked. He gave me a stiff nod. I walked out of that room with my dignity intact. No speeches, no begging. When you've never sold yourself for recognition, you don't miss it when the ground is pulled out from under you. I passed through the hallway where people pretended to be too busy to look my way. Some of them were interns I helped hire, trained by me to understand the complexities of the logistics tracking systems I personally designed years ago. Now they just pushed buttons, not really knowing what they were doing. Back at my cubicle on the 2nd floor, my plant was a little wilted. The picture frame with a photo of my wife, Marina, and our 2 daughters, now grown, still smiled. My mug with the Colorado State University crest, where I studied data engineering back in the 80s, felt older than I did at that moment. I emptied the drawer slowly. Every object held a piece of me. Every file I closed on the computer was part of a story no one else at that company understood. Literally. The tracking systems, the security logs, the backup routines, the overnight tracking filters, they were all built by me, adjusted over the years to withstand external attacks, and ironically, internal sabotage too. But no one there had a clue what really held that whole structure together, and that's exactly why they let me go. Outside, the sun shone on, completely indifferent to what had just happened. I drove to a nearby parking lot and sat there for a good 20 minutes, just staring at the building where I'd worked for 21 years. My ID badge had been reissued 19 times, a number I hadn't thought about until that very moment. In the glove compartment, there was a sealed USB drive, one of 6 backups I'd personally created since 2015, after a data breach nearly sank the company. I handled that crisis on my own, without a shred of recognition. But what I felt in that moment wasn't pride. It was clarity. They had no idea what they had just set in motion. The wheel was already turning. That night, Marina watched me in silence. I was on the couch, TV on some random channel, remote in hand, pretending everything was normal. But it wasn't sadness I felt. It was something harder to name. A bitter mix of injustice and a strange kind of lucidity. She brought me a cup of tea, sat down next to me and simply said, "They messed with the wrong man." I smiled, but didn't respond. After 27 years of marriage, she knew that when I got too quiet, it meant something was being carefully put together in my head. The next day, I walked into my home office. Nothing fancy, but functional. Technical books on the shelves, old manuals nobody read anymore, and a printer I kept stocked like clockwork. I plugged one of the USB drives into the computer and opened the access logs from January through August. I started cross-checking data, retracing steps most people thought were invisible. The suspicious activity showed up fast. Small tweaks to freight contracts, unapproved changes to cargo insurance values, and one name kept popping up in those odd payments: Blue Horizon Integrated Consulting. A quick search told me the company had only been registered less than 2 years ago, operating out of a rented co-working space in Littleton. No website, no history, no listed employees. Just one name: Carla O'Donnell. Took me less than 2 minutes to confirm she was Lucas's sister. The same Carla who, coincidentally, had previously worked at a financial consulting firm in Florida, one that shut down after an investigation into conflicts of interest. Way too many coincidences. I kept digging. Found duplicate authorizations, invoices with amounts that didn't match our internal spreadsheets, and a clear pattern. The transactions were processed through a subroutine I had personally coded to speed up operational reimbursements. A secure system, but in the wrong hands, a silent goldmine. From that point on, everything started to make sense. Lucas needed me out of the way because I was the one piece that didn't fit in the machine. Someone who could see the shadows between the numbers. Someone who understood the system better than the actual IT department. And they thought that by letting me go, they'd erased the trail. But they forgot. I built the maze. In an old folder, I found a partial dossier I'd been updating since 2021, back when another manager tried to siphon funds through an inflated contract with a fake freight company. I reported it internally at the time. The case got buried, and he left the company for personal reasons. Since then, I became more cautious, more precise, and now all the records were lining up like pieces of a twisted puzzle, and I already had the edges in place. That Friday afternoon, I got a generic email from Northwell, a termination form. No thank you, no acknowledgement of 21 years of spotless work. Just a PDF with instructions on how to access a system that, ironically, I had designed myself. I took a deep breath. It was time to play the first cards. I logged into a secondary email, one I used for phishing test simulations, part of a free security training I used to give new employees. From there, I sent a discreet message to 3 managers I still trusted, asking them to review reimbursement records from the last 18 months. I didn't name names, no accusations, just a warning. Recent adjustments may indicate inconsistencies in accounting flows. Immediate review recommended. Almost instantly, I got a reply from Camila Vega, the Interstate Operations Manager. Eduardo, I knew something was off. Do you have proof? I haven't responded yet. I wasn't after some rushed revenge. I was after something bigger. I wanted the truth out in the open, not just for me, but for everyone who still believed doing the right thing should matter more than doing what's convenient. That night, I sat on the couch without saying a word. Marina set dinner on the table, but she knew I wouldn't eat. She watched me from the corner of her eye, in that silent way only someone who's known you for almost 30 years can. They really think you're just going to let this go? She finally asked. I didn't answer. I just leaned my head back against the chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling. But inside, something was burning. It wasn't sadness. It was something sharper, darker. I didn't want justice. I wanted them to pay. Not just for what they did to me, but for thinking they could do it to anyone. The next day, I woke up early, earlier than I did when I was still working. I walked into my office, locked the door, and sat down at the computer. I pulled a USB drive from the bottom of a box where I kept my personal documents. The label read Titanium Zo4. It was one of 5 off-the-grid backups I kept without anyone knowing. I always knew the day might come when they'd try to erase me, and when that day came, I'd be ready. I plugged in the drive and began opening folders. Log reports, tracking records, freight movement statements, everything was there. In 21 years, I'd seen more fraud than I care to admit, and I'd learned how to smell a rat, even when the paperwork looked clean. 1 hour of cross-checking was all it took to confirm what I'd already suspected. Bloated contracts, duplicate reimbursements, automated signatures on documents that were supposed to require direct approval. The name Blue Horizon Integrated Consulting jumped off the screen like a fly on fine china. Brand new, shady as hell, and pulling in larger and larger sums for vague, logistical monitoring services. I dug deeper, found the company's listed address, a co-working space in Littleton, no real physical headquarters, and the name on the registration, Carla O'Donnell. A quick search confirmed she was Lucas's sister, the same Lucas who fired me with that smug look on his face like he was tossing out an old computer. Carla, who had already shut down another company back in Florida under investigation for money laundering. Her record was dirtier than a truck stop floor. I kept tracing the network. Found another partner consultancy called Evertrace Logistics. No website, no client history, but it had received nearly $600,000 in the past 8 months. And guess what? It was registered to one Dennis Warner, Carla's brother-in-law. The web was wide, filthy, and carefully built, and I had it all saved. Screenshots, cross-referenced with invoices, time-stamped, tied to system logins authorized by, guess who? Lucas himself. It was a con. Simple, but effective. They created fake companies, provided half-baked services, and billed the company double. Since the logistics and tracking systems were real, no one questioned it. Only someone with deep access, like me, could see the numbers didn't match historical patterns, and that someone, of course, had to be removed. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and started organizing the data. But this time, I wasn't going to play it quiet like before. I didn't just want to warn someone. I wanted them to fall. I wanted to see Lucas's eyes wide with panic, his name dragged through the mud, his reputation in ruins, his ego crushed. I wanted everyone to see what happens when you cross the wrong man. By late afternoon, I got the standard formal termination email. Just a link to some cold documents. No thank you, no recognition for the time I gave. To them, I was just an expired number. They had no idea I was the comma between stability and collapse. I logged into an old email account I'd created years ago for cybersecurity testing, off the Northwell grid. From there, I messaged Camila Vega, the Interstate Ops Manager, one of the few people I still trusted. Check the most recent operational reimbursement entries and contracts with third-party vendors since March 2022. There are inconsistencies, big ones. Less than an hour later, she replied, "Eduardo, something seriously wrong here." I knew it. "Do you have more details?" I read her message and smiled for the first time in 2 days. It had begun, and they had no idea the storm that was coming. This time I wasn't saving anyone. I spent the weekend plotting every move. I gathered every document that proved the scheme, doctored invoices, payments to shell companies, manually altered permissions in internal systems, even screenshots of login activity from Lucas's IP address, after hours. Anyone who knows the back end knows exactly where to dig, and I knew it better than anyone. Their mistake was thinking the old tech guy didn't have vision, when in fact, I was the one who built the very foundation of their digital security. They cut the wrong wire. On Monday at 7:52 a.m. I cast the first bait, an email sent directly to Lucas with Camila BCC'd. Subject: Preliminary analysis of logistical irregularities, elevated legal risk. The body was short, direct, and deliberately unsettling. Lucas, while reviewing old records for my professional portfolio, I noticed patterns that could raise serious legal concerns. Maybe we should talk before I take this further. I attached just 2 documents, one showing Blue Horizon's tax ID, and another listing its linked transactions, surprise, tied to a bank account in a family member's name. Less than 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Lucas. I ignored it. Then came a voicemail. "Eduardo, I don't understand your email. Are you implying something? Can we talk in person?" Funny how his voice suddenly had urgency, something he never had when barking orders with that smug tone. I left it unanswered. Power doesn't always equal control. By 10 a.m., Patricia from compliance emailed me. "We're aware of your recent communication. Please note that referencing internal data may breach your exit agreement. My response was already queued. I haven't signed anything. And everything I have is in Northwell's financial and public interest. Are you trying to silence me or investigate? By then, I knew the board had been alerted. So at 11:47 a.m., I made my move. A full 36-page report with 9 attachments sent straight to Julio Kramer, chairman of the board. A meticulous man known for quietly firing 2 execs years ago after anonymous tips that turned out to be true. The file name was clear: systematic fraud in logistics contracts, technical and operational evidence. In the email I wrote, "Mr. Kramer, I'm sharing data of serious operational and financial concern. As a former Northwell employee and the architect behind part of your internal systems, I felt morally obligated to report what I've uncovered. I'm available for clarification." Tuesday morning, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Unknown numbers, nervous managers. A direct email from the company's lead counsel calling for an emergency meeting. I declined everyone. And that's when the fire started. Camilla messaged me. "Eduardo, something's going down." Lucas walked out of the meeting pale as a ghost. Patricia was crying in the lobby. Kramer just called for an independent audit. "What's happening?" I replied simply, "Keep watching and save the old logs. They'll try to erase everything." By Wednesday, the internal memos began. First, an announcement of a comprehensive audit of all third-party contracts. Then, the temporary suspension of Lucas due to personal matters. The message was clear. They were trying to contain the leak without admitting the ship had a massive crack in its hull. But it was too late. I sent my second and final drop. A simplified version of the report, now written in plain language, sent to every board member and regional director. Right at the top I wrote, "Before you approve the quarterly bonuses, review the attached documents. Northwell's credibility is on the line." At 6:35 p.m., Camilla sent me a screenshot from the leadership group chat. "All financial releases suspended until further notice. Direct order from the board." I smiled. It was working. The web they built to shut me up was now choking on its own threads. If you followed the story this far, tell me, would you have done the same in my place? Or would you have just walked away? Drop a comment below, because stories like this only matter when we share them. And hey, if you're into real stories with just the right amount of justice, hit subscribe. But do it like you're raising your hand to say, "I don't let people walk all over me either." By Thursday morning, the media started sniffing around. Small logistics blogs and business news sites began quietly posting updates about internal contract reviews at Northwell Logistics. No names, of course, but that was all it took for my phone to start buzzing again. Only this time it wasn't Lucas, or Patricia, or even Kramer. It was an unknown number from New York. I picked up. "Mr. Eduardo Franco," a calm, formal male voice asked. "This is Neil Barrow, editor of the investigative section at Freight and Audit Weekly. We've received an anonymous dossier containing documents from Northwell. Your name appears in a few technical signatures. Could we talk?" I took a deep breath. I hadn't leaked anything to the press, which meant someone inside the company, maybe Camilla or another manager who'd had enough, had spread the seeds I planted. I answered carefully, "I'm not authorized to make any official statements, but I can confirm that the documents I signed are legitimate." He thanked me, and I knew it was only a matter of hours before things spun out of control. At 10:12 a.m., I got a notification. Lucas had deleted his LinkedIn. By 11 a.m., Blue Horizon's website went offline. At 11:27, I received another message from Northwell. This time, a new offer. A peaceful resolution agreement with confidentiality clauses, retroactive bonus, and legal support. All of it just to make me stop. I printed out the offer, slid it into the full report, and wrote a single sentence in red ink at the top. "Trying to cover up a leak only confirms there is one." I took the envelope to a FedEx office and addressed it directly to Amanda Pearson, an independent board member, former IRS director, widely known for her integrity. At the same time, I began preparing my final move. Using old credentials, which IT had failed to revoke, I accessed the internal email server and scheduled a message to be sent the next morning to every Northwell employee with a title above Coordinator. Subject: what you deserve to know about the company you work for. The body of the email was direct, no drama, no baseless accusations, just facts, links, screenshots, fake contracts, official documents. It ended with one question, one I wanted echoing in the mind of everyone who read it. If they did this to the guy who built the system, what's stopping them from doing it to you tomorrow? By Friday, chaos had taken over. I got screenshots of canceled meetings, emergency calls, internal chats in full panic mode. Camilla called me, shocked. "Did you see this? Did you see what's happening in here?" She told me Patricia broke down during a legal call. Lucas had tried to erase traces from the servers, but it was already too late. The independent audit, ordered by Amanda, was already inside the company, and they were uncovering things even I didn't know about. That's when Camilla gave me the final missing thread. Dennis Warner, Carla's brother-in-law, and the man behind Evertrace Logistics, was also a silent partner in a third company providing document digitization services, another front that had been receiving direct payments from Northwell for work that was never done. 3 ghost companies, all connected by family ties, bleeding the company for nearly $5 million over 2 years, with the complicity of upper management. By Friday afternoon, an official announcement was sent to the entire company. Lucas O'Donnell, Patricia Fontes, and Dennis Warner were suspended indefinitely. The note stated the board would be initiating a full review of the company's governance and transparency framework. In other words, the house was crumbling. At 7:17 p.m., I received a message from Amanda. "Mr. Franco, I've read the material you sent. I'm deeply impressed by the depth, the accuracy, and your courage. We'd like to meet with you in person. Northwell is in a fragile moment, and we need someone who understands the system from the inside to help us rebuild credibility." I smiled. Their castle had turned to ash, and now they were calling on me to rebuild it. But I don't rush decisions, not when I'm in control. I made them bleed without raising my voice, without shouting, just with data, precision, and a well-timed plan. The following Monday, I put on a clean shirt, laced up the shoes I'd saved for special occasions, and headed to Northwell's headquarters. I wasn't an employee anymore. But now, I set the terms. At reception, the security guard, the same guy who used to greet me with a lazy nod, stood up quickly and offered me coffee. "Mr. Franco, they're expecting you upstairs." They'd never called me that before. The executive floor, once off limits to me, now opened with glass doors that slid apart as I approached. Amanda Pearson greeted me with a firm handshake and a clear, steady gaze. "We're restructuring upper leadership, Eduardo. We want you to head the new Office of Integrity and Strategic Security, reporting directly to the board. No middlemen, no politics. Real authority to make real change." They handed me a solid contract, 3 times my old salary, bulletproof clauses protecting against retaliation. I read every line, looked up, then I said, "I have a counter-proposal." I handed over a dossier outlining my conditions: monthly independent audits, unrestricted access to the entire company system, full autonomy to build my own team, and a total veto on any vendor or payment without triple verification. Amanda read it all in silence, then closed the folder and said, "You want to build something fair, and we need that more than ever." We signed right then and there. 3 months later, Lucas was officially indicted for corporate fraud, unlawful enrichment, and accounting manipulation. Patricia agreed to a plea deal in exchange for cooperation. Dennis Warner fled the country, but the FBI had already issued an international warrant. And Northwell, under new leadership, began rebuilding brick by brick. I was at the foundation, The rotten system that had silently eaten away at everything I built was now collapsing under the weight of my precise revenge. That Friday afternoon, I sat on the porch with Marina. The sun cast a warm light on our white picket fence. She looked at me and asked, like she always does, "So what now?" I smiled. It wasn't anger driving me anymore. It was something more powerful. The awareness that this time I wasn't silenced. That someone like me didn't just survive, but flipped the script. Before the week was over, I opened my mostly empty LinkedIn and posted a single sentence. They tried to bury me, forgetting I was a seed. The post went viral. In less than 24 hours, I got hundreds of messages. People who'd also been discarded, overlooked, crushed by bosses who thought stability was weakness. And there, in that virtual space, something bigger than revenge was born. A network, a collective voice, a reminder that the invisible ones know where the bodies are buried. If this story struck a chord with you, if it reminded you of something done to you or something you watched happen to someone quiet like me, then I invite you to subscribe here to the channel. But not as a number, as a witness, as part of a community that doesn't stay silent. Drop your story in the comments or tell me what you took away from this. What you learned, what you do differently, or what you do exactly the same. Let's turn this into a space for all of us, where your voice finally has room to be heard.